بینەرانی عزیز ئەم کاتتان باش چاوپێکەوتنی ئەم جارەی NRT لەگەڵ نووسەرێکی دیار و لێکۆڵەرێکی ئەمریکیە ئەویش مایکل ڕوبنە. مایکل ڕوبن لە ئێستادا وەکو لێکۆڵەر لە پەیمانگای ئینتەرپرایزی ئەمریکی AEI وەکو لێکۆڵەر کار دەکات. بواریکاری ئەم نووسەرە زیاتر خۆی لە خۆرهەڵاتی ناوەڕاست دەبینێتەوە بە تایبەتی عێراق و تورکیا و ئێران. ڕەنگە مبالەغەش نەبێت گەر بڵین لە 10 ساڵی ڕابردوودا زۆرترین نووسینی لەسەر باشووری کوردستان بڵاو کردبێتەوە وەکو چاودێرێکی ئەمریکی. ئێمە ئەمڕۆ هەوڵ دەدەین چەند تەورێکی گرنگی تایبەت بە هەرێمی کوردستان و ناوچەکە لەگەڵ مایکل ڕوبن تاوتوێ بکەین. لەوانەش ئەزمموی حکومڕانی لە هەرێم و دیموکراسی و گەندەڵی و پەیوەندیەکانی کوردستان و عێراق و کوردستان و ئەمریکا و گۆڕانکاری و پێشاتەکانی ناوچەکە بینەرمان بن. Hello, Mr. Michael.
Hello.
And welcome to our program. Thanks for this chance for answering our questions or NRT's questions. Let me start with you speaking about the past 20 years. How do you define the past 20 years of self-governing and self-ruling in Iraqi Kurdistan? Don't you think that looking back at history, it is a good experience regardless its weaknesses?
Well, certainly the Kurds have achieved a lot, and there's many people who deserve credit for that. From the beginning of the Kurdistan Regional Government, from Operation Provide Comfort in 1991, what the Kurds have achieved is truly amazing. And I'm not sure whether there's such precedent for other examples in the world. Saddam Hussein thought that he was going to starve the Kurds into submission, and instead the Kurds began to thrive. Throughout the 1990s, the Kurds were under two sanctions. They were under United Nations sanctions, they were under Iraqi sanctions, and yet they showed the world by the development in Iraqi Kurdistan that the problem wasn't the sanctions, like Saddam Hussein said. Actually, the problem was Saddam Hussein's dictatorship. Unfortunately, however, just because we've had this progress in the past, that does not become or should not become a substitute for progress in the future.
Right. Speaking about the 90s, don't you think that the lack of experience and the lack of knowledge and skills made the Kurdish officials and the Kurdish leaders not to be able to govern and to rule in a good way?
Well, certainly, that would be an example. There was any number of experiences which the Kurds had. You had not only the experience of the Peshmerga in various countries, you also had the experience of various professionals who had their education in Romania, in Eastern Europe, in the Soviet Union. And so they did have that experience. But for example, you had other Kurds who had experience in the West. The recently deceased president of Salahuddin University, Sadi Barzinji, the past president, I mean, had, I believe, studied at Sorbonne University. So you had a lot of opportunity for knowledge to be pooled. That said, while mistakes are understandable and mistakes have happened, that should not become a self-perpetuating excuse, again, not to have progress.
Yeah. Do you think that the officials in Kurdistan exploited these opportunities?
Well, certainly, if by these opportunities the Kurdish leaders came into power, they had their own experience, and they certainly exploited the crisis, I would say, in order not to reform. I honestly think many of the Kurdish leaders understand how the outside world works. They just don't think that it's necessarily in their personal interest to take those lessons and apply that. For example, let's say that you are a prominent Kurdish leader and you decide to send your son or your sons to university in the United States. Let's say American University. Just because you attend American University and you come back with a degree, maybe your father gave a lot of money to the university as well. You come back, that doesn't make you someone who is necessarily liberal. You may come back, say you have a degree from American University, say you're a Democrat, but you could still be your same old self. You could still be the person who's going off and kidnapping journalists.
Yeah. Do you think that they have the right to send their children to the universities abroad and others not?
Well, they have a right to send their children to the universities abroad.
Because they were Peshmergas and things like this.
This is what I would argue they should do. They don't have the right to discriminate. What they should do is this. One thing which Iraqi Kurdistan lacks is a professional statistics bureau. There's nothing wrong with giving scholarships, and certainly some sons of and daughters of prominent officials are going to win those scholarships. Also, some of the IDPs and the children of the IDPs from Kirkuk have the merit to win their scholarships. What the ruling government is afraid to do is publish the statistics of all the scholarships are given. They should say each year how many went to KDP members' families, how many went to PUK, how many to Quran, how many to independent parties. The reason why this government seems not to want to provide statistics is because they don't want people to know the truth.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, which is the question of most of the people in Kurdistan. When you ask the Kurdish leaders and the officials why you live in this way, the answer is that we live it in the mountains, we starved, we faced so many difficulties before the 90s, in 70s, 80s, and before that. Do you think that being a Peshmerga and being a person who defended his country in the past is a good justification for living in that way that we see nowadays in Kurdistan?
There's never a good justification for corruption. The reason why the Peshmerga were fighting, they were fighting against oppression. They were fighting
Has this happened in Europe and America?
No, you
Leaders
don't.
said, well, I
don't
did so
have
and
this
so.
idea of perpetual right, of perpetual entitlement. The fact of the matter is, people fought in the mountains, they were fought for freedom, they fought for liberty, they said they were fighting for democracy. When we go back to what we were talking about before with the models, the understandings, unfortunately, some of them decided that they could take down Saddam's picture, but then put up pictures of new Saddams. The idea should have been to take down Saddam's picture and really fight for democracy, and that means accountability, that means living under the rule of law, regardless of what your family name is, and regardless of what your family history is.
So, do you mean that we removed the picture of Saddam Hussein and we brought so many other pictures of Saddam Hussein?
No, what I mean is you remove the picture of Saddam Hussein, but the model of that sort of government has been transplanted, at least in some people's minds, to where they think Saddam was the problem. It wasn't just Saddam that was the problem. It was the system Saddam represented, the system of dictatorship, the system of family rule. When I say that we shouldn't just take Saddam's picture and replace it with another Saddam, what I mean is we shouldn't just take an idea of family rule and replace it with a picture of another family.
Right.
What ultimately we need to do is have set principles: freedom, liberty, democracy, transparency, accountability, and that's what, to be fair, many Peshmerga do actually fight for today. What I want to be careful of doing is just because some Peshmerga went to the mountains, they came back, they may now weigh 150 kilograms, and so forth. They're sitting pretty in houses, who knows where they got the money. That's not every Peshmerga. Many very, very honorable Peshmerga are still fighting for these sorts of freedoms, and the younger generation, especially the journalists, are as well.
Well, let's come to something that happened in the middle of 90s, and it's something that every Kurd is not proud of,
Right.
which is the civil war. Civil war happened and many Kurds killed between two superpower parties in Kurdistan. What do you think about this war? Is this something natural, or is this a natural consequence of newly coming to power persons, and something like this it's natural to be happen?
No, it's not natural to happen. It was inexcusable to happen, and the reason it happened ultimately had to do with an unwillingness, one, to share power, and two, with corruption. You add into that noxious mix the fact that different foreign powers were playing in Kurdistan with the different parties, perhaps Saddam on one side, perhaps Iran on the other, and so forth. What I would hope would happen, and when we look at all the lives, all the missing people, that's each one of those missing people is a disaster for the families who lost their loved ones, and there should be transparency.
Till now they don't know whether they are alive or dead.
No, and there's absolutely no excuse for that. You can't say that you stand for human rights and yet refuse to open your mouth and talk about what happened to 3,000 missing Kurds whose only crime was perhaps they had the wrong person's picture in the wrong house. And there's no excuse for that. So that is something which the Kurds deserve an answer to, especially as we move on to the 20th anniversary soon of the civil war in the next few years. Now, on top of which, I hope that the Kurds have learned the lesson from the civil war. Because when the Kurds can talk about how they live in a very rough neighborhood, they live with Syria, they live with the central Iraqi government, with Turkey, with Iran, and that all these countries will try to play in Kurdistan, they will try to interfere.
Right.
But ultimately, no one forces an Iraqi Kurdish politician to take orders from Turkey. No one forces them to take orders from Qasem Soleimani or from anyone else or from Nouri al-Maliki. And so ultimately, as we have a situation of tension developing again, this time between Iran and Turkey, I hope that the Kurds will preserve everything they have achieved here rather than for the sake of money on the part of some very specific leaders to allow themselves to once again be used.
Well, speaking about the civil war, do you think that just stating and saying that, I mean the political leaders, the leaders of the two superpowers, just saying I'm sorry for what happened in the civil war, is it enough?
Well, ultimately that's going to be a question which the Iraqi Kurds need to answer. There's all sorts of models about peace and reconciliation out there. For example, what occurred in South Africa after the fall of apartheid. But at the core of those examples is before one can get forgiveness, they actually have to say the truth. And neither of the major political party leaders has yet been willing to acknowledge the truth.
Right. After the civil war, PUK and KDP put an end for the fight and battle between them by signing a strategic agreement. What's your opinion about this agreement?
Well, at the time it ended the civil war, it seemed to be wise, but it wasn't meant to be permanent. It wasn't meant to be in perpetuity. If you're going to have a true democracy, you have to be accountable to the people. You have to be willing to lose an election, learn the lessons from that loss, and then compete another day. You can't simply, for example, delay the municipal elections until you can come to an agreement about what the result should be before anyone goes to the polls. Now, ultimately, when it comes to President Barzani and to Imam Jalal, they have a question. To President Barzani, do you want to be remembered as Hosni Mubarak, or do you want to be remembered as Nelson Mandela? Ultimately, what Nelson Mandela did was he took power, he led a great struggle, and then he did the most honorable thing of all, and it's the reason why he's going to go down in history as a great man. He stepped down to allow others to fill in and take his place, despite what he had suffered, and he had suffered just like any Peshmerga had suffered. Or do he want to be like Hosni Mubarak or Bashar al-Assad, in which case...
It's clear what happened to him.
Exactly. And it's clear how history will remember them.
Yeah, right. Well, speaking about the agreement, I mean the strategic agreement between PUK and KDP. As you studied history, world history, is there something like this, I mean an agreement between two political parties just to finish or to put an end for the fights between them? Is there something like this?
There hasn't. Perhaps the closest we're going to come is to the situation in Palestine right now between Fatah and Hamas, but we can see that that clearly doesn't work either.
So there's no example of such an agreement between parties in the history?
Offhand, not that I can think of, because ultimately what you're doing is a dictatorship by coalition rather than having a democracy.
You call it dictatorship?
Yes.
Well, PUK and KDP leaders, when you ask them what is the benefit of such an agreement between them, they will answer or reply to you that this agreement put an end, or in other words, it is a guarantee in order not to fight again.
Perhaps that logic would have made sense in 1997. But people who are now 15 years old, they have no memory of the Civil War. They weren't even born during the Civil War. Ultimately, what we're talking about is a change of generation. If we extend that further, if people who are 15 years old now weren't even alive during the Civil War, people who are in the university likely don't even remember that time. They were 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. Ultimately, when you have a whole nother generation out there, it's not right of the older generation to deny into perpetuity democracy to the younger generations.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, leaving the agreement, about the situation of Kurds in the new Iraq, I mean, after 2003?
Well, certainly, there's been a great deal. First of all, a lot of people in the United States and elsewhere forget the threat that faced Kurdistan when Saddam Hussein was still alive. There was a real belief, both in Iraq itself, in Iraqi Kurdistan, and in many of the neighboring countries, that Saddam Hussein could retake Kurdistan at any point in time. So the fact that Saddam Hussein is gone is really God's blessing, because Kurdistan for the first time can thrive. And when you look around the streets of Sulaymaniyah, when you look at Erbil, when you look at Duhok, you can see the positives that the Kurds can achieve when they are not under that sort of threat. So that is a very positive thing. However, when we look at the period from 2003 to 2012, it's a period of unmet expectations about democracy, about freedom. When we look at Kurdistan today, the improvements Kurdistan has achieved aren't enough. It can achieve 10 times more if there was substantive political reform.
So this kind of reform, we like this kind of reform nowadays?
Well,
Kurdistan?
ultimately, what I'm thinking about is the issue of corruption. When Kurdistan oftentimes talks, they say they're the new Iraq, they talk about how they want to be like a Dubai. Now, Dubai has problems, and it's certainly not a democracy. But when someone wants to do business in Dubai, they don't have to only do business with the ruling family. Certainly, the ruling family gets involved, and there is corruption. But at the same time, the ruling family doesn't kill people who want to start a business on their own. So you have a real marked difference there. Likewise, in Dubai, there seems to have been much more care taken to ensure that it's not only the ruling family which benefited, but that ordinary people had the ability to benefit.
So don't you think that the chances are equal?
The chances are equal to what?
For everyone to work and to do anything?
No, absolutely not. And we see this, as we were talking about before, with the scholarships. Merit isn't as important as family connections, except for a scholarship that's not administered by the parties. For example, the Fulbright Fellowship, which the United States has. Ultimately, we still have a situation that when American companies want to do business in Erbil, they are told that you have to hire these people from the Kurdistan Democratic Party, and that's the reason why, oil companies aside, many American businesses have now chosen not to do business in Kurdistan. We can talk about the Kurdistan American Chamber of Commerce all we want.
We will come to this point and this relation between US and Kurdistan. This was in the past. I mean the scholarships. Nowadays you can see that many students and many people from the poor families, even from the opposition parties even, they go abroad and study, and KRG funded them.
Are they, the question is whether they are going for their party connection or they're going for their merit. Ultimately, we should have a system, we should promote a system where Kurdistan is a meritocracy. Those who work hard, those who are the most clever in any particular subject will have the best opportunity. Ultimately, we can look around the world, and societies that only exist to perpetuate the party tend not to develop as well as they could. We can look at examples of oil booms in countries in Central Asia, for example, where there was a great deal of optimism in parts of Azerbaijan, in Turkmenistan, and so forth, in Uzbekistan even, and yet 20 years on, they haven't met those expectations because the party still retained firm control, and ultimately investors started looking someplace else.
But you were in Kurdistan in, I think, past 10 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. situations changed from this time. Don't you think that looking from America to Kurdistan situation, you can't be something to be justice in judging all the situations here?
Well,
because most of the people think when I myself read one of your articles, you are too pessimistic about the situation in Kurdistan. What makes you to be so pessimistic about the situation in Kurdistan?
The way I always describe myself is this: you can be an optimist, you can be a pessimist, or you can be a defeatist. An optimist will always see the best things in society and not acknowledge the problem. A defeatist will always look at the problems in society, throw up their hands and say, nothing can change, nothing can be helped. The reason why I will admittedly define myself as a pessimist is what I will do is I will try to focus on some of the problems with an idea, if we can solve these problems, think about how good, how much better Kurdistan can become. It really doesn't need to stop at being Dubai. It can be Singapore, it can be Denmark, it can be something so much more.
You always see the empty part of the glass.
With an idea about how to fill it. That's the key. The idea is one, it's not shameful to try to identify problems and try to fix them. And admittedly, I love Kurdistan and I see the progress here. That said, because I am not living in Kurdistan, because I'm not constantly under the threat, because I don't have to worry about being kidnapped like Soran was, Sardasht Osman was, and so forth, then I have the ability to write what others aren't able to write. The truly bold people nowadays, though, are the people who live in Kurdistan, the journalists working for any number of papers, the younger generation, who, despite the threats that constantly face them, aren't afraid to look at the dictator and say, the emperor has no clothes, a reference to the European story about how if enough people stand up and say this has to change, eventually it will.
Well, speaking about the relations between KRG and Iraq, President Barzani in one of his statements said that al-Maliki is driving Iraq to dictatorship. And he said that al-Maliki, Nouri al-Maliki, is a dictator, and he's a person who wants to rule Iraq from his point of view, not from the point of view of the Iraqis. What's your opinion about this?
Ultimately, I don't think that Prime Minister Maliki has the degree of control over the rest of Iraq that President Barzani has over much of Kurdistan. And therefore, I would worry, should Prime Minister Maliki truly try to consolidate control even further after the next election. Let's face the facts. In Baghdad, he is gaining increasing popularity. Muqtada al-Sadr is losing popularity. Ayad Alawi is losing popularity. If there were elections next month in Baghdad, Nouri al-Maliki would win a great deal more than he has in the past. That's not an excuse, however, for not implementing democratic reforms and for not implementing transparency, either in Baghdad and the rest of Iraq, or frankly in Kurdistan. If Masoud Barzani can recognize what a dictator looks like, then it's time he looks in the mirror.
Well, before taking a break, you have only 1 minute to answer me. 20 years of ruling in Kurdistan compared to the 9 years of ruling in Iraq. What do you see?
I see Kurdistan thriving. Look, when I first came here in the year 2000, you couldn't drive from Duhok to Erbil at night because of the insecurity. And suddenly we really have a blossoming. I see that blossoming in Basra. I see that blossoming in Najaf. That reminds me of what Kurdistan must have been like 15 years ago. Baghdad, still a disaster.
Well, thanks.
We
will take a break. بنراني عزيزنا وبريك وقفتوا كمان لقل مايكل روبن بردوان دبيت.